Well, hi, Carlyn. Welcome to Rebuilding My Health. I'm so excited to chat with you. You're a friend, and excited to connect again and have you here.
I'm so excited to be back because I think when was the first time I was on your show? It must have been
Oh, uh,
when you
years.
first
It's
started.
it's been years.
In
Yeah,
years, yeah. So the journey's continued, and I'm really excited to circle back.
yeah, yeah. Me too. Me too. Yeah, yeah. And it's been beautiful watching your journey over the years since I first met you and chatted with you, and I've been so inspired by everything that you do. You have to tell us about your shirt, though.
Okay, so I'm wearing a shirt that says "Whoever smiles first wins," which is this is a part of my mission and a part of my movement with my brand Strangers to Friends, and it's knowing that we have the power to shift the energy wherever we go with our smile. And it's all about human connection. And this is a friendly invitation to show up and be seen and to see somebody else. But it's also really about the knowing that we all have a story behind our smile, whether that story is the silent disease, whether it is what's going on at work, whether it's whatever it is. And we have the choice to show up every day and smile for ourselves. And so, since we're on camera, I'll take this one step further. And a lot of this goes back to an accident, a bike accident I was in when I was living in Colorado back in 2013. And I knew not to get on the bike, but I didn't listen to my intuition. So when that bike ended up causing me to face plant and I lost my teeth on impact, it became part of this story. So it just so happens, because I'm in Australia right now, I'll mention that, but I was in New Zealand a few weeks ago and my crown broke off. So underneath this right now, this is what I actually look like. And so we had the conversation beforehand of whether I should start the show like this or show this. And I said, I think it's more powerful that I show that this is something you would never know is going on, something that I'm dealing with. And I deal with it every day. I have to decide, do I put my tooth in and go out? Do I stay at home? I can't eat with this. And and a lot of people actually deal with tooth stuff. But I really wanted to show this just to show nothing can steal your smile, even if you don't have teeth. And whatever it is we're going through, we get the choice every day of how we're going to show up and how we're going to allow whatever has happened to us to define us.
Mhm.
So I can sit here and have the rest of the conversation just
Yeah,
like this,
yeah,
or I can put my teeth back in.
yeah, yeah. You're good. Yeah, I mean, just be you. Yes.
I'm just going to be me because the intention should not be, this doesn't change who I am, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And it's actually easier for me to articulate words without this Invisalign,
Right.
you know, retainer in my mouth. So if it's okay with everybody, this is me.
Yes, it is. It is. Yes, beautiful you. So, yeah, thank you for that. So, absolutely, we don't know what stories are behind someone's smile. So, um, would you, and you have a lot of stories behind your smile, but let's talk about your MS story specifically and kind of go back to the early days of that.
Um, so I'll start by saying that next week I turn 47, which is crazy. Um, so I've never been an adult without my MS journey because I was 19 years old when I was diagnosed. That was 1997. So we're going back a ways. We're going back to a time before Google. We're going back to a time before you could just search and find people like you to have a role model, to find the answers. And at a time when MS was kind of considered a death sentence. I mean, there was way more uncertainty and unpredictability around it. I think at the time there was just Richard Pryor. My friends' parents didn't have friends with it. So when I tell my story, I always say that, you know, it was the unthinkable that happened to me when it happened because I'd never met anybody with it before. So just to summarize it, for those wondering, I, woke up just like any other day, was taking a shower, noticed I couldn't feel the water hitting my arm the same way. Within a few days, it was if you drew a line down my body, my left side was now numb and almost like rubbery to touch, like I had no feeling on my torso. but my scalp was tingly. I had optic neuritis. And so all of this led to, and I was a sophomore at Indiana University, and my parents were 9 hours away at home in South Carolina. But all this led to getting a bunch of tests, the MRI, the spinal tap, and, you know, what I knew was all these symptoms were happening to me, and that they gave me Solumedrol, or they gave me the steroids, and the symptoms started to subside. And so I didn't know if this meant I would have this forever, if it was just something that would come and go. Like I didn't know. But part of my story I share is my diagnosis itself and what happened shortly after my diagnosis. But during my diagnosis process, the MRI did come back with lesions, and so we were able to, that's what prompted, you know, the radiologist to send me to a neurologist for further testing, which was the spinal tap. Well, my spinal tap, for those that have had one before, you know, they take the protein and they mix it with your blood, and they do some sort of test, and they're looking for answers and blah blah blah. The lab, and oh, and to backstory, when you do get a spinal tap, the body normally forms a natural scab so that fluid is no longer leaking into the system. And if it does, it's going to cause headaches, nausea, all these things. Well, the doctor sent me home without warning me that if these things happen, come back in, we'll give you a blood patch. I just thought I was having a really bad reaction to it, and I was migraines and sick and all this stuff. So when I finally went back in a week later, and they gave me a blood patch, and I was fine. I was back to normal. Like, wow, why didn't I know this sooner? So when 2 weeks later, the lab and the doctor's office let my parents know that somehow my blood work and my spinal fluid got misplaced from each other, and the test was never completed. So they were going to need to do another spinal tap to run the test again. And thank God my parents sided with me, because I was like, there's no way I'm going through that again. Like,
Yeah.
I had just gone through so much, and
Right.
my parents were okay.
Yeah.
So from that day on, not knowing what I was doing, when someone would say to me, I heard you were diagnosed with MS, or I'm so sorry you were diagnosed with MS. And I'd say, well, there's actually only a 50% chance I have it. We only got half the test results back.
Right.
And yes, I knew I had it, but
Yeah.
I never fully like owned it, like in my core to a degree.
Yeah.
And part of my, so there's that. Then part of my story is what happened within the 9 months of my diagnosis. And that is, both of my best friends died in separate car accidents. When you're 19 and 20 years old, it is much harder to accept and heal and understand and make sense of how you just buried both of your best friends next to each other. It's unthinkable, more unthinkable than the MS. So, what normally someone's handed this diagnosis and it becomes their world and they become consumed with it, it almost took a back seat to what I became consumed with. And that was, you know, grieving and from the loss of friends. And so what became, I tell my story and say, what some thought as a death sentence, I said became ultimately, and it wasn't right away that I had this aha, but it ultimately maybe became my life sentence. And this
Yeah.
life sentence, and oh my God, I just learned very quickly, not only am I not invincible like MS, but I'm not invincible. I could die.
Mhm.
We never know. And
Yeah.
so something slowly began to shift in me.
Mhm.
And that's when within, you know, a year and a half, whatever it was, that it was following junior year or something, I decided to study abroad. And that's something I never would have chosen for myself. I was inspired to do it because I was depressed, and I was trying to figure out who I was. I mean, there were so many layers to it. But when I found myself overseas, I went to London for a semester, and my birthday was this week actually. Was Yeah, because it was St. Patrick's Day, that I was in London. I'm sorry, we went to Ireland, and I had this epiphany of, I wouldn't be this American fulfilling this dream of mine of being in Dublin, Ireland for St. Patrick's Day, had all this not happened. And I had this powerful awareness come over me of, oh my gosh, what if things actually happened for me, not to me?
Mhm.
I have to say thank you to these things because it invited this. And
Mhm.
that kind of became foundational through the rest of my life. And this MS journey of mine has been long. Like 6 years later, I did have another exacerbation,
Mhm.
and I've gone on, and that was paralysis on my left leg for about a week and a half. And that was scary. And it hit me in a whole different way. I mean, I couldn't drive my car, I couldn't go to work. It was
Mhm.
more things. I was now, 26 years old, living in San Diego. But I still took myself. I lived like 6 blocks from a 24-hour fitness. I still took myself to a gym and I called it a wiggle in my walk. And I still weeble wobble down the sidewalk just with a little limp. And I used the recumbent bike. I could still put my leg on a bike and not one leg work for the other. So I just wouldn't allow it to stop me. And I was
Mhm.
always looking for ways, okay, how can I work around this? Or rather than, I mean, I allowed myself to be sad and angry and concerned and confused, but I just didn't linger in it, you know?
Mhm.
And I've had a journey with different medications over the years. Like when I was first diagnosed, I immediately went on Avonex. And this was back when there were only 3 medications for MS back then. And a nurse actually came to my house in college. I had 4 roommates, and a nurse came to my house and taught me, because this was before they had injectors. So now you have injectors, you stick the needle in it, you don't have to see it, you click a button and it goes into your skin. This is before that. So a nurse came to the house. We used a grapefruit because a grapefruit skin has a is similar to human skin with the texture. I had to learn how to give myself a shot into a grapefruit to
Wow.
practice giving it on my leg. I mean, there was so much to it back then. Fast forward, I ended up being one of the first in the United States to go on Tysabri in 2007. Um, Sabri was an IV. And so I don't know how much into the MS story
Mhm.
you want me to go, but I went from Avonex, and then I went through my phase of, and Avonex made me sick every week. I was like injecting myself with the flu. I was in college. I had to schedule my classes around it. To when I graduated, and I was living alone, that's when I went through my stubbornness. I don't want to take this anymore. I don't
Mhm.
have symptoms. Why am I sticking myself with something that makes me sick?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
went through a phase of pretending I was taking it, not being honest with my doctors and kind of hiding
Mhm.
and just whatever. Um, and then eventually I switched to another medication called Copaxone, and that was a different needle type and a different in the skin and a different reaction to it. And then um, I basically decided to stop. It wasn't like a conscious I'm med free, but I didn't want to stick myself anymore. So I
Mhm.
went through this phase of I'm not taking my meds because I don't like being sick from my meds.
Yeah.
And then that's when Tysabri came out, which was this infusion. And at that time, my career, I was a travel nurse recruiter. So I used to place nurses in hospitals around the country. So it was a fascinating role to not only be a recruiter, but a recruiter with MS. So I had a lot of conversations with my nurses. And one of my nurses, I give her credit for actually like really encouraging me, like, you should go explore this medication. So I did. And I realized it made everybody feel at ease. My parents felt better. I was on a med. I didn't have a reaction to this medication. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on a monthly infusion. And after the infusion was, I lived in San Diego at the time, and after each infusion, I'd have a Band-Aid from the IV on my arm. And after every monthly infusion, I went for a run. I started making a new, how do I inspire like anything I could do to flip the story, to flip the
Mhm.
screen, to flip it.
Mhm.
And at this point, I wasn't running half marathons and running races, but I loved movement and I appreciated my body. And I've always really appreciated the ability and the choice we have to move. And I think we have to thank our bodies, and we don't spend enough time in that space. And then, yeah, I can go on and on and on
Yeah.
to the
Right.
decision that I made to stop taking Tysabri, because
Yeah,
people
why
get,
did you make that decision? Because it seemed like it was helping you, but
yeah,
how
it was
how'd you make that
working, but I was one of the first 10,000 in the United States to go on it,
decision?
which meant like things were just shared with the FDA, and there was this whole thing. And then eventually a small population started developing an incurable brain disease called PML, which was very scary because there was so much uncertainty around it. And all they knew at this time was that people that were contracting it all had been on the medication for around the same amount of time, and that was 2.5 years. Well, I fit that time frame. So my neurologist, when they shared this information, said, you know, we're just going to take this, we're going to keep a bigger, more closer watch to this. So instead of one MRI, we're going to do 2 a year. Instead of this, we're going to every 6 months or every 3 months. Well, I was 30 or 31 at the time, and I'd already discovered quantum physics. I'd already discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza. I already was aware of my superpowers to manifest. I already was aware of this knowing of mindset. I was already playing in this space of energy healing. The last straw would be to release my medication. So I looked at my neurologist and said, help me understand. Am I treating MS or am I treating a drug?
Yeah.
Because these additional MRIs had nothing to do with my MS. They now had to do with the drug. And I said, are you paying for this?
Yeah.
I don't want to pay for an additional MRI. I don't want to pay for all, like this was, and so I started shifting my perspective with my medication. And it just so happened that right around this time, this was March 2010, and a lot of things were changing. So in 2008, 2009, when the market crashed, I had been working with a big public company as a nurse recruiter. Well, I was let go from that job, and eventually the market was coming back. Now I was going back to work with a small recruiting company. And guess what? I had been paying Cobra, this time, but now my big paid for public company insurance was changing to a small company insurance. So my Tysabri went from being fully covered, no copay, nothing, to my first infusion was going to cost me $3,000 out of pocket. And
Wow.
I said, huh. So not only am I treating a drug, I've now got to pay $3 extra thousand to continue on this medication. All these little things, these educated things that I was experiencing is what led me to make the decision to know my body without meds. But the biggest piece was this running that I had started doing. This running had slowly become a passion of mine. And I wasn't trying to be the girl with MS that was running. I was running because I'd actually been a smoker for 15 years, and I quit smoking and I started to fall in love with running. And January 2010, I ran my first half marathon. And not only did I did it, but I did it well,
Yeah.
and I loved it. And I was excited, like, I want to do this again.
Yeah.
So I asked my neurologist, am I setting myself up for a relapse if I go off this med? Like, how dependent am I on this? And he said it takes 3 months for the medication to fully get out of the body. And I said, okay, I'll come back in if something happens in the next 3 months, I'll be back. Well, not only did nothing else happen, I signed up for my next half marathon.
Wow. So instead of going back into the doctor, you signed up for another marathon.
Signed up for another
Half
half marathon.
marathon.
So
Yeah.
I tell people I traded in my meds for a pair of sneakers.
Yeah.
And I just started listening to my body. And I always said to friends and family, if it feels off, I'll go back.
Yeah.
The more I ran, the stronger I became, the healthier I became, both physically, emotionally, mindset. Because there's so much backstory, but when it comes to autoimmune disease, I never want to say, point the finger back at yourself, because that's not where we want to go. We don't know where these diseases are birthed from. However, there is something auto, which means there could be a role that you are playing in all of this. I believe there is. I believe that we have the opportunity to live each day better. I'm not saying we're all going to heal, but we can feel better each day with the choices we make and then see where that ripple effect takes us. So my struggle in early childhood, in my adolescence, in my teens, a lot of it was this body, my relationship with food, my body image, my self-talk. And when I tell people how I quote unquote healed myself from MS, the story is I didn't know I was. I wasn't trying to.
Mhm.
I just started healing myself. And as I started healing myself, I started healing, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so the happier I got, the healthier I became because I was making healthier choices. I was proud of myself. I felt strong. I became more courageous. And it became this journey where now my relationship with MS is it's almost like there's a new identity that I've had to adapt within myself because their journey has been so profound that I still say MS was the best thing that ever happened to me because of how it formed me over the years. And I didn't allow it fueled me in many ways. Now, for the person listening that hasn't been as fortunate with their symptoms, for the person that doesn't have the same time to focus on themselves, I have no husband, I have no kids, I've had more flexibility. I don't know why I was given this path, but this was my path. I still believe that we have the power to shift whatever it is, like this. I've I can decide not to leave the house
Mhm.
and not share my smile, or I can just be talking to you guys and it's not even a thing.
Right.
Not even a
Yeah.
thing. So how much power do we give it? How much energy do we give it? And I'm not saying not to be angry and to be upset and that it's not hard. I don't want to bypass what we all go through. Um, but we, even if you have 6 months to live and you know that. Now, I've never been in that situation, so I can't speak from that and actually know what somebody who's been handed that is going through. So this isn't to say I know what's best in that regard, but I do know if you're given a, a fact of some sort, you still get to decide what to do with that fact.
Mhm.
And you can still say, if I've only got 6 months left, what can I do
Mhm.
versus what am I never going to be able to do?
Absolutely. That
And I
that
think
control. Yeah.
it's
That.
it's taking back
Mhm.
or yeah, it's taking control where you have control
Mhm.
and recognizing that first of all, suffering is a part of living. We grow from suffering. We're not designed not to suffer. Every religion is founded in suffering. It's just
Mhm.
how it shows up for us. And if you haven't had it yet, it's coming. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think many people get out of this journey called life without something. Now, health is just an interesting place because to play in because now the world we live in, we have more awareness of how food might play a role, of how screen time and isolation might play a role. There's all these things out here that can actually affect our health that we have to then take responsibility for. So I'm not going to say how I eat healed my MS, but I know that how I eat affects how I feel. Plain and simple. If I eat like crap, I feel like crap. If I eat
Yeah.
better, I feel better.
Right.
I'm not going to say lifting weights and running healed my MS,
Mhm.
but I'm going to say that being mobile and being stronger makes my body work better.
Right.
That's going to be anybody, and muscle has memory. And there's so much science right now on now everybody tries to defy age. Everyone wants to beat aging. It's like no one wants to get old, which is,
Yeah.
I think, a issue sometimes, because aging should be is a gift, but we all just want to feel better as we age. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm sure there's genetics and there's this and that, but whenever I meet somebody that's been diagnosed with MS, I get excited in this weird way, because we have this, like, we're in a club, you know. And I always say, I wish I just met a woman the other day at a market here in Melbourne, where I am in Australia. And she's a hemp store. It was like she's like the largest hemp distribution in Melbourne. And I asked her, I go, because they don't have medical marijuana here the same way they do in America. And I said, what inspired you to open this? And she said, my journey with MS. And I go, what? I know your journey. And we dropped into like this
Wow.
powerful conversation. And her story is very different, because she was in like a near fatal car accident and the spinal fusion, and she had all this back stuff happen, and then the MS came. So she has the story that a lot of people have of something they believe set it off, and there's, so, like I said, stress plays such a powerful role. But the point of that is, I had to look at her and say, I wish these weren't the circumstances for which we're bonding, but I'm so grateful to meet you and learn your story. And it wouldn't happen this way if we
Right.
didn't have this. And that goes back to this message. And that I believe so much of healing happens by us sharing, like what you're doing, what you've created, and what you're offering people is this opportunity to hear our stories.
Mhm.
I believe so much of healing is not feeling alone in our story, hearing different people's versions of it, but recognizing you're your own science experiment.
Yeah.
And only you know what works for you, and only you know by trying different things. And people have some crazy stories of how they've healed. And
Right.
it's cool to hear all the different people's stories. Doesn't mean they're going to work for you.
Right.
I don't tell people do like me. I'm just here to show hope.
Right.
This was my story and this became my story. So
Mhm.
don't give up, and you have faith that it could be yours too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Every story is different. And I know that from all the interviews I've done. And I know you know that from all the people you've spoken with. I will say that mindset is probably the number one underlying thing of what I've discovered from all these people I've interviewed, is that there has to be this mindset of it's possible before anything else can happen. So um so yeah, it's but yeah, that's hi
There's a
Kitty.
cat that's entering the picture. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Welcome Kitty.
Yes.
Yeah, but
So
like,
mindset.
yeah,
So
it is so much a part of any healing story from my perspective, because if you the first thing you think is there's nothing I can do about it, then that colors everything, right?
this is Quentin. We'll just invite Quentin into the story for a second. Hi, Quentin. I'm going to put you down now. We're going to give you a little bit of love.
Gosh,
So there
Quentin
you
is
go.
adorable.
There you go. Now you're down there. Okay, you got his needs are met. Mindset. None of us are we're born with everything we need inside of us, but we're not born with the journey of what it takes to become us, I think. And I wasn't raised by parents that taught me mindset. This was before my generation, wasn't anybody that talked about the power of the mind back in, the 80s and the 90s. But I've and I don't know like what makes people feel called to think optimistically. But I knew from, I've always been curious. I've always been a curious soul. And I think curiosity keeps an open mind.
Mhm.
And in that curiosity, there's a difference between what if and why not, and how you spin the what ifs and how you spin it. You're giving yourself permission to try something, right? Why not try this concept of possibility,
Mhm.
see how it feels? I didn't consciously, and I think why my story even is shocking when I think back on my life and my story. When I was told that I didn't get those when I didn't get the results from that spinal test, I
Mhm.
was just being matter of fact. I was like, well, here it is on paper. We only got half the results. Well, if we only got half the results, I always was a glass half full person. I've always been a glass half full person. Okay, why not be glass half full? Now, in hindsight, maybe there was a little bit of me just masking. I don't want to say masking, but maybe I was scared. And maybe in this fear of MS, my way of responding to the fear that I could have MS and it could lead me down a path of a wheelchair, which I decided from the very moment I got it, I was like, I will never be in a wheelchair. I will never be in a wheelchair. I just would say that over and over again. Like, my story is not to be one in a wheelchair. And I started saying, I'm going to plant my feet all over this planet as long as I possibly can. Those are the exact words. That is still my mantra. And it is still how I'm living my life, speaking to you from Melbourne, Australia. I will plant my feet all over this planet as long as I possibly can. I will have gratitude for the ability to walk. I will have gratitude for the ability to move my body and to make these choices. And it worked. It was working. So why not stick with it? I
Mhm.
think the journey of mindset and is a courageous journey and one that happens over time. I'm more, it's easier for me to do this because this isn't my first rodeo. If this was it, if this was the first time, if this just happened for the first time, there's a learning curve. I think there's a learning curve your with with positivity sometimes, like you can't expect somebody to be slammed with this news and just be positive. That is not doing the work. I mean,
Right.
I had to go through I buried both of my best friends next to each other. What did you want me to do? Sit
Yeah.
and just grieve and grieve and grieve, or go, okay, guys, I know you're with me for the journey because I have my two angels with me. Let's do this. Help me out. I had all kinds of crazy things I was playing with to help me believe in myself and believe that, wait, it
Mhm.
can't be this. It's got to be this, right?
Yeah.
So along the way, outside of MS, outside of just health and physical things, a lot of other stuff has happened to me in life.
Um,
A lot of things I didn't ask for, a lot of things I didn't plan, job losses, house losses, all these things. And you have to apply it to that just like you apply it to this. So I've played around over the course of my life going, okay, what if I trust this is actually happening for something better? Even though, being fired from my job or being told 30 days to move out or a pandemic and everything shutting down or my car engine dying. I've been through it. How do you remain optimistic? It's hard. It's not easy. You just have to keep showing up.
Mhm.
And then I think in my world, I call it Plan F. I've developed my own formula. this journey. Yes. So this is
Share.
a formula that I want to teach. I'm going to start teaching at some point. I'm going to turn it into a course and an opportunity to guide people through this journey. Should they really be ready to shift? And that is this journey of fear to freedom.
Mhm.
How do you take something that feels so profoundly, when you're in the space of uncertainty, how do you go from a space of uncertainty to this space of looking back on the journey and going, wow, look what happened as a result of that. I never would have imagined myself here. It's fear. And from the fear, you have to acknowledge it. You have to feel it. It's fear and then it's feeling. So you've got the uncertainty, then you feel that uncertainty and you acknowledge this sucks. I'm scared. And you punch and you scream and you curse and you do what you need to do. And for some, it takes 3 days. For some, it takes 3 years. The shorter, the better. But you got to acknowledge it, not just jump over to here. Once you acknowledge it, I'm trying to remember if I even remember the F's in order in my head. Then you have, yes, then the next piece is forgive. And the forgiveness comes from a lot of times what we're navigating through, we somehow played a role in it. Whether we, and a lot of times it's people pleasing. We said yes to something we didn't want. We look back on our life, if only we had, if only we hadn't, all this space. But at the end of the day, we were doing the best we could with what we had. Me smoking, me having an eating disorder, me all these things that I had, maybe it did cause the MS. I don't know, but that was who I was back then, and I have to forgive that version of me. Or the job I took, I know I didn't want it, or the relationship I stayed in, I didn't want to be in. I have to forgive myself for that. So you have to give yourself grace. And once you've given yourself grace and you start forgiving, you then unlock something unlocks within you and you create more space within you. And now this energy that isn't being consumed by beating yourself up becomes available to put back into you. And when you put that energy back into you, it shows up as ideas. It shows up as perspectives. It shows up as now you're flipping the story. You're giving yourself permission to see something differently. Once you start flipping the story, the next piece is you have to fuel it. You have to start taking some form of action. And this is where the rubber meets the road. Because to take this action, you have to have the most key ingredient, and that's faith. And faith is the optimism. Faith is the hope. Faith is going against the odds. Faith is taking a chance. Faith is going, this feels right. I'm willing to show up.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing what's aligned and it's not plan force, which is a whole different ballgame, but it's plan faith, then the next, then things start to line up. This is my relationship with this journey is, wait, I'm getting confirmations that it's what I'm doing is right. And the confirmations are showing up in the form of, so I call this part plan friend. Because the friend aspect is the way God, universe, source starts revealing to you that you're doing something right. The people you meet, the opportunities you're given, the synchronicities. This is the synchronicities that start showing up are your little high fives from the universe. Then you get to step into the next F, which is plan flow. And flow is, this is the aligned action. Now you're actually so present. You're not in the story. So even right now, if you look back to the fear, you're like, whoa, I already came from that to this. But you're so present with it and you're aligned. It's now natural. You're actually just starting to experience some of the results of this journey. So the next piece I think is pretty important that a lot of people skip. I don't skip, and that is plan fulfillment. And that is celebrate, acknowledge, appreciate, give yourself some credit. Like, whoa, I did that. Like, applaud yourself for what you've done because that was very brave
Mhm.
and it worked.
Mhm.
And then last piece is plan freedom. Because now you've taken all this, and that is you are living in joy. You are experiencing a level of joy that never would have existed had you not gone through this journey to bring you here.
Mhm.
Now you're an elevated version of yourself. You have tools that you didn't have before. You've learned so much about yourself. You've been courageous in ways you didn't know possible. And now you're confident in ways you didn't know possible. So now the next time a plan F comes, because it will come, you can't say that your life's over
Mhm. Yeah.
because you just proved to yourself you made it through that one. So what
Mhm.
if you can make it through this one? That has been the entire story of my life.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
my first F started with the very, 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 very beginning of my MS journey. And I didn't realize, and it happened when I was in London, St. Patrick's Day at that moment when I had this profound moment. I had failed at my freshman year in college to try and prevent the freshman 15. I had signed up for an aerobics class, dance aerobics in the morning in college. And I failed it. And I failed it because I didn't show up. I failed dance aerobics. That F, I know it's funny. Like, what, who the heck? I was a freshman in college. I should have known better than to put an 8 a.m. class to go. It was my first winter. It was all the things. It's pure comedy, actually. It's comedy that this awareness started by failing dance aerobics, but it did. That F ended up changing the course of my life that played a role with my MS diagnosis in the most profound way. And that is, I was not fully thinking for myself at that moment. I was just going to join a sorority because everybody else was. But because of that F, I didn't make the right GPA to get into the sorority that I wanted to go into. So I had to pivot and I had to forgive myself. I had to go through this journey of finding these four women that ended up becoming my roommates that we got this awesome house off campus right behind Ben and Jerry's on like the fun street at Indiana University, so that when all my friends were in the sorority, everybody was coming to our house to hang out with us because we had our own house. Like we were like who knew? That's the house I was living in when I was diagnosed with MS and when both of my best friends died. My parents were able to come stay with me. I got to have privacy. I got to form these friendships with these four women that became like so integral in my journey. And I truly believe that that chapter of experiencing it in that way, it would have been so different if I had just been in a sorority house.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know, but I always say getting that F was the best thing that happened on the
Right.
journey.
Yeah.
And
Sending you on this entirely different course, but had some beautiful upsides and outcomes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
powerful.
I love it. The the plan F and all those phases, and I can see, like you said, like that can take for some people the all going through all those phases could take years, or it could be like quick something that you do quickly, like over a day or a week or whatever. You're like, oh, okay, that plan isn't going to work out, or you're on a road trip,
How many
something
times,
goes wrong.
like,
Yeah.
how many times in your life are you like, you look back? I mean, it's the same thing with the people we meet. When we meet somebody, with strangers to friends, and my passion of knowing our stories connect us all, when we meet somebody, we never know why we're meeting. Like, I remember when you and I met, would we really know that, like, that's, I don't know how many years it's been now, like 8 or 9, I don't know,
A
8 years,
long time.
that's a long
Yeah.
time. We'd be like, we don't know the journey we're going on, even with a human when we meet them. Not
Yeah.
that they're a bad thing to happen, but it's like,
Right.
it's trusting in the journey and the work that we do to build friendship, even. Like, and we
Yeah.
get to look back and go, wow, I never would have thought meeting you then would turn into this. And
Yeah.
how many times in life did shit go wrong for shit to go right?
Yeah.
The plan F is there's no such thing as plan A.
Yeah.
It
Right.
means planning means you think you know what's best.
Yeah.
You're in control and it needs to go this way. Plan
Yeah.
F is better than you could have planned because
Yeah.
absolutely have no control over it. And you have no idea what the outcome's going to be. You just have to show up and trust.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And learn from it and
Learn from
have
it
great, gratitude
and
for it.
grow. I mean, this
Yeah.
isn't, it's not rocket science. This is my spin to it. I mean, it's the hero's journey. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's work, we all go through a hero's journey and we go through multiple hero's journeys in our lifetime.
Yeah.
It's just about, like I said, suffering is a part of every religion. The lotus, it's the same journey.
Mhm.
It's, but it goes back to mindset.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're going to get stuck in that journey if you don't have faith, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't think you deserve it, if you have an excuse for everything, like you'll get stuck in the journey. And
Mhm.
you can get yourself unstuck, but it's up to you. I mean,
Right.
people can tell us till we're blue in the face what's best for us. And a lot of times they're right. It's just until we're ready to hear it and ready to do the work, like sometimes they're not right. And there's that too, but sometimes they do have our best interest at heart. And, but none of us, I know the things that I've delayed for myself. I know the things that I haven't applied myself to. I know it. Come on. We all sit with ourselves. We have to be real with ourselves for
Mm.
this plan F to work. It doesn't work if you're not real with yourself.
Yeah. Right.
It's then you're fake. Then you're playing fake.
Right. Yeah. And really, really getting in tune. You mentioned early on, like, noticing the negative self-thoughts and like just you like really have to be so, I think, kind of in tune with
Yeah, and I'll say
yourself.
I'm the queen of negative self-talk. Like I need people to know that. If you're into astrology, I'm a double Gemini. I'm Pisces sun, double Gemini. I overthink. I wish I knew how I get myself to that moment where I just go, and the thing happens. I don't know that,
Mhm.
but I overthink and I'm really hard on myself. Um, so it is. And so some people, what happens, they have no fear and it's super easy. I don't know why those people are like
Mhm.
that either. I don't know why we, and they say it goes back to everything from the age of 1 to the age of 7, and how we were conditioned and how we were raised and these limiting beliefs that we developed at such a young age. Someone told us to be quiet, so we kept our mouth shut. Someone told us we couldn't, so we believed we couldn't. But at some point in our life, we either need to do the work and heal that and address that and heal it, or we just decide we're tired of that story. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes for me, like when I don't want to get out, I mean, I struggle. Big, I go through depression, I go through all the things when I get anxiety. I know that when I get anxiety, it's not showing up because of anything wrong. It's forcing me to face. Like there's a decision, there's something I need to address. And that's where the anxiety is coming from. It's from if it's keeping you up at night, it's because you need to do something
Mhm.
or surrender into it and trust. I mean, it's all it's not go take a pill. I want to get rid of the anxiety. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying there aren't chemical imbalances and there are phobias, there are real things, but a lot of times it is, just sitting with yourself and
Mhm.
having
Yeah.
those tough moments with yourself.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which is so critical. Well, Carlin, kind of, it sounds like, like, and you've said this before that, the happier you got, the healthier you got. And, I love what you said of when you healed yourself, so, which is like so profound to think about, the layers of that. So, and it sounds like you have really kind of kept your MS symptoms
So I never say
at
I've cured
bay.
myself.
Right. Yeah.
I always just say, I learned how to get along with it. I stopped fighting it. I'm not a big proponent of fighting MS, fighting cancer,
Mhm.
fighting. I don't believe that should be a part of how we address
Mhm.
healing.
Yeah.
So I've been med free since 2010. I have not had a major exacerbation in that time frame. I went and got an MRI in 2022, and I found an amazing radiologist that I took my CDs or whatever we have from 2009, 2013, it was like 2017, 2000. I took all my images and I handed them to him. And I said, will you do me a favor? And I want you to lie them all side by side. And I want you to tell me what the journey has been. Like, am I okay that I've been med free? Like, has anything new happened? Has anything, whatever? And not only has nothing new happened, but in 2022, he said that my lesions had gotten smaller.
That's remarkable.
So when I was given that vote of confidence,
Yeah.
it encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing. Now, I we all, when it comes to MS and when it comes to being human, we all have a side sometimes that's more dominant than the other. So I do, my left side was my MS side, and that was my side that had paralysis. I am mindful of when I don't get enough sleep, if I'm dehydrated, if I over exercise, if I had too many drinks one night, which that rarely happens anymore. But like, there's things that are gonna maybe make me feel weaker on my left side,
Mhm.
but it's nothing, it's more of a whoop, okay, pay attention to that and then figure out what I can do versus I can't do. I mean,
Mhm.
throw in the fact that I'm 47 and hormones and aging and everything. Like, now I don't know what is the cause of anything.
Yeah.
Everything's starting to feel crazy. But I'm very fortunate that my journey with MS has allowed me to be, I went on to run I ran the Boston and the New York Marathon in 2015 for the MS Society.
Yeah.
And I'm not a marathon runner anymore because running is hard. And I don't have any desire to run for 4.5 hours straight ever again. But I
I get
loved it back then. And it was great for me. But even that, like, um, we can do so much more than we know we can do. And, you know, I think I'm inspired by people all the time. And a lot of the reason I'm inspired by people is I've never been in that circumstance. So
Mhm.
I don't know how I would respond.
Mhm.
But if I was in that circumstance, maybe I would respond that way.
Mhm.
I just don't know. There's an instinct in us. Like, there's a thing in us. So I don't want people to compare to each other either and say, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. Well, maybe you could. You just haven't been in that situation. And at least we have all these stories out there that we know what is possible in the event that we are put into a situation. I think that when somebody's newly diagnosed, it is the most imperative moment that to have somebody that they can talk to and share their fears and share where they're at, and to have somebody understand them. There's a difference between sympathy and support. And I'm a big proponent of um, it's not, yes, we need empathy and we need sympathy, but we need support, and we need support from someone that understands it and someone that gets it and someone that can hold space, but someone that can also, be there to help them on a path, because unfortunately there's too much out there on the internet now, and you don't know what is real and what isn't real. And it's scary. None of that existed when I went through my journey. So mine was all intuitive and mine was all internal. And we've gotten away from that. So if we've gotten away from it, if you can connect with somebody that still understands that and so where I come in, if I can help somebody on their journey, if I can, whether it's one conversation or 3 months of helping somebody, I've helped people in numerous capacities. And sometimes it's just talking to somebody, like I said, that makes you feel sane,
Mhm.
because there's a
Right.
lot of insanity when it comes to your body going haywire.
Yeah.
And you know, you wake up one day completely different than you were the day before, and you don't know why.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
Mhm.
I'm very fortunate that this is how the purpose that it gave me.
Yeah. Right, right. And you've inspired so many people in so many different ways with MS, with all kinds of challenges. Tell folks where they can kind of find and follow you.
Well, so Lots of ways. I'm on Facebook. My name is Carlyn Shaw, so Carlyn. There are two of us out there. I know the other girl actually. She's actually
Oh,
in Australia, believe it or not. She's 10 years younger than me.
oh
Yeah,
wow.
I know. So she got the Instagram before I
Ah,
knew to grab it. So she got the handle, which is
uh-huh.
why I am Connect with Carlyn. I know, isn't it funny back then? I have the domain, so carlynshaw.com.
Good.
And
Good for you.
right? It's you never think about that stuff when everything first comes out, but you have to claim it. So you can
Yeah.
find me at carlynshaw.com. And also it's strangers to friends. So if anyone is interested, I have t-shirts, tank tops, baby onesies, the whole 9 yards. So you can go to strangers to friends and find that information and some other stories and learn about ways to connect and, just email me. Just if email is your thing, just send me an email, carlyn@carlynshaw.com. I think if you put my name into Google, it'll pop out all sorts of things now.
Right. It does. I actually asked ChatGPT about you before
You
our
did?
conversation. I mean, I know you, of course.
Oh, what did chat? I'm having fun with ChatGPT right now. What did ChatGPT say?
Yeah, yes. Well, because I was like, I know Carlin said something about this before. Can you remind me what Carlin said about this? And it was like, yes, Carlin Shaw says, and it knows like the things, that
There's
you
a lot out there. There's a
yeah.
fun one of my favorite news articles that was written about me was after I ran the Boston Marathon in the Denver Post. So if anybody Googles Carlyn Shaw runner Denver Post, and it's titled like chooses MS as fuel, not fear. And I didn't give them that title.
Yeah.
So they use these F words
Oh,
in this optimism journey of mine. And it's my story of running the Boston Marathon with MS. So
wow.
yeah, it's
That's
out there.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, you should definitely go to ChatGPT and put yourself in there and see what it says because
I'm doing that as soon as we
you'll
get off.
you'll learn. Yeah. But yeah, it was super, super helpful. Well,
You
Carlin,
so much for inviting me back.
thank
And
you.
like, let's talk about the fact that my stories in your book
Yeah,
and your
it's
book is a collection of optimism stories, essentially,
yeah,
right?
autoimmune. Yeah, success
But
stories.
essentially, the person in your story had faith
Yeah, right.
and
Right.
they bet on themselves,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
even when other people weren't betting on them.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually
Yeah. Yeah, kind of against all odds in some
yeah.
situations. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Now,
absolutely.
if only I'll say it's just a funny side note. My one thing with the human body and the designing of our body is if we can heal in so many ways, why were we only given one set of teeth to regrow? We all know the first set only lasts like what, 8 to 10 years, and then you lose them. And then we're
Yeah.
one set to last for another 80. Come on, why don't we grow another set of teeth? That
Yes.
would make way too much sense. We can regenerate in so many ways. This
Yeah.
is where God dropped the ball. We should have been
Right.
given a third, fourth, fifth set of teeth. That's my
Right. Exactly.
that's my
That would have
only,
been super helpful, wouldn't
that
it?
would have been so helpful.
Yeah.
Only so. And until then, we make the best of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your beautiful smile and your beautiful story and wisdom. So,
Thank you. I really appreciated it. It was good. It's really good to step in and share again.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know people will get a lot out of it. So, and
Yeah.
I hope people hear you hear it from
Yeah,
people. So,
me too. Find me, friends. Find me.
yeah,
Let's play.
yeah. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Carlin.
Thank you.